Hello, everyone. I'm going to tell you a little bit about the foundation that I work at. We're a nonprofit foundation that is affiliated with an investment firm that some of you in the audience are probably familiar with. So I'll tell you about our foundation. There we go. All right. Okay, the slide did a little funny stuff. At RTW Foundation, we believe that good health is not a privilege, it's a right. Yet, far too many of our underserved communities don't have access to quality health care or therapeutics. That's why we're committed to powering community initiatives and scientific research to bridge this gap and improve lives. Our work is built on two key pillars: supporting rare disease research initiatives and community engagement initiatives to advance health equity and access to health care and education. While these may seem like they're distinct, separate missions, they do share a common vision. That's ensuring that all communities, especially the underserved, have the opportunity to live healthier lives. For individuals affected by rare diseases, inequities in research and access to life-changing treatments persist. On the community side, common and often preventable diseases disproportionately impact underserved populations due to differences in social determinants of health, and this can further limit their access to quality care. Before diving into our work on rare diseases, I want to tell you a little bit about the pillar that I don't work in. This is the community engagement side. Health isn't just about medicine. It's shaped by where we live, what we eat, and the opportunities we have. It's led by my colleague Sarah Garwood at the foundation. I think she's watching today. Hey, Sarah. So her work in the health equity grants and partnership initiatives address these social determinants of health. And she works with New York City community-based organizations to improve education, food access, access to mental health resources, and preventative health care. Her days of action bring this mission to life. She connects communities with healthy food, preventative screenings, and essential health services. Meanwhile, the BioQuest STEM mentoring program that we've started has grown rapidly. It's providing hands-on learning and exposure to careers in science and medicine for students in grades 6 through 12, inspiring future healthcare leaders. We also act in times of crisis through emergency response efforts. We've provided medical aid and relief to communities affected by war, natural disasters, and public health emergencies. By tackling these barriers to health, we're not just providing resources, we're empowering communities. Now I'd like to turn to another key area of our work, our efforts in rare disease research. So this is more pertinent to today's conversation. Within the rare disease pillar, our focus is clear. It's to advance scientific initiatives to aid in the development of medicines for neglected rare diseases. Our journey began with a fundamental challenge. Genetic medicines hold immense promise, but many ultra-rare diseases affect too few patients to attract traditional biotech investment needed for commercialization. So we started with a question of, how could we help to bridge this gap? As the philanthropic arm of RTW Investments, we leveraged the firm's collective historical expertise in working with companies focused on developing novel cell and gene therapies for rare diseases in particular. At the foundation, we applied these learnings toward the ultra-rare diseases, the ones that are so rare that you can't form a company around them. One of our first initiatives focused on providing funding for an individual patient's access to an advanced genetic medicine. This enabled Eddie Ndopu access to Evrysdi, a drug used to treat spinal muscular atrophy in adult patients. While this was highly impactful, at the individual level, over time, this approach proved to be unsustainable at scale. So unfortunately, we had to discontinue this effort, but we learned a lot by taking on this approach. Another bold step that we took was to establish our own nonprofit research laboratory, the RTW Foundation Research Institute. It was meant to develop AAV gene therapies for ultra-rare diseases, and we started with one called Christensen syndrome, an X-linked neurodegenerative disorder that affects boys. We developed some AAV vectors, we shared them out to researchers, and we developed several academic collaborations that continue today. But sustaining a nonprofit lab proved to be far too costly for long-term impact and scalability. Even though we were able to make a meaningful impact within Christensen syndrome, unfortunately, we ended up needing to close down the laboratory after a year and a half of operation. Simultaneous to all these efforts, we also took the more traditional route of funding academic researchers who were conducting translational studies in ultra-rare diseases. This model generated strong interest and high-quality proposals. We continue to support these grants, but we've since refined our approach to better align with the Rare Disease Foundation's needs that we work with. Now, I've told you that 2 of these 3 initiatives didn't really work out as we had planned, but each experience provided critical insights that helped us to shape a more effective and scalable future strategy that I'll tell you about. So next, I'll share some of these lessons learned and some of them that we adopted to help better serve the needs of the rare disease community. So we continued to fund more and more academic research. We also began talking to more and more rare disease foundations. Some of these foundations were newly formed, others had been around for a long time and were well established. We heard from families at every stage of their therapeutic odyssey, as well as those that had already achieved some measure of success. And some patterns began to emerge in all these conversations. We also took a look at our granting strategy. By this time, it had been a few years' worth of data collected. And despite funding strong academic projects, with many achieving successes as exhibited by publications or reaching all the milestones associated with each of the grants, we ended up with relatively few that progressed towards the clinic. The impact to patients was incremental at best when we really took a hard look at this. We also saw some potential misalignment between academic researchers and foundations' priorities. Researchers are often juggling, through no fault of their own, multiple competing priorities, whereas rare families and foundations are usually singularly focused on a single endpoint, getting therapies for their loved ones. Looking at the rare disease success stories and speaking to the individuals that had made it within the community, we asked ourselves what made the difference. And this differentiator will be unsurprising to any rare disease advocates that are sitting in the audience, but it took us a while to come around to it. It was oftentimes a critical rare parent that acted as the relentless force that kept pushing the research forward until it reached the clinic. This realization led us to rethink our approach. And we thought about resetting the playing field with a greater focus on empowering foundations as opposed to empowering the academic researchers. So we wanted to tap into the rare disease community's ability to drive that progress forward. Academic researchers are great. They're amazing researchers. They know their work well, but their work is exploratory, and it often runs into roadblocks when they get near the IND-enabling stage. And this can come in the form of a lack of clinical expertise or in the inability to address complex regulatory questions that they might need to solve, or funding for some of these really sophisticated and complex therapeutic modalities. Clinicians provide care, but their focus is on patient management. Biotech companies oftentimes drive the drug development into the clinic, but only when there's a viable market available. Rare parents for these ultra-rare diseases are the driving force that moves mountains, and ultimately that was the key factor in the examples that I'm shown here for the parents that I've outlined. Again and again, the most successful ultra-rare disease initiatives were driven by parents who refused to take no for an answer. They didn't just fund the research, they learned the science, built collaborations, and made things happen because they had to. This realization shaped RTW Foundation's evolution and approach to rare diseases. We redefined our initiatives and not just focus on funding science, but on empowering rare disease foundations to help them navigate the complex world of drug development. To maximize our impact, we've evolved our program. Our flagship program right now is our Rare Disease Advising Program. It's a free consulting service that equips rare disease foundations with the knowledge and the expertise to make informed strategic decisions about research funding and drug development. Many of the most effective ultra-rare disease foundations are founded by parents determined to find treatments for their children. While these foundations excel at fundraising, they often lack the scientific expertise to navigate the drug development process. Through our advising program, we work with them to help them develop roadmaps, select the right therapeutic modalities, and bridge knowledge gaps, ensuring that the research dollars are deployed effectively. And then when additional funds are needed to help meaningfully accelerate research, We can apply our foundation-focused research grants to help push this forward, empowering the foundations themselves to continue being the leaders in their own therapeutic research efforts. We also help them identify key research partners to work with, linking the foundations with academic researchers or CROs that are best positioned to help the foundations advance their therapeutic research forward. So I've outlined a few of our initiatives and how we've evolved our approach to rare disease research. And I'd like to introduce you to one family, one foundation that we've been working with for a little while now, Michelle and Dan from Ellie's team. They're a family-led foundation formed after their daughter's diagnosis with an IRF2 BPL-related genetic disorder. So hopefully this goes. Maybe I'll have to hit forward one more time. There it goes.
I remember the day we were sitting in the hospital and got Ellie's diagnosis. We were told there's no treatment, there's no cure. Well, our doctor called us very shortly after that. He said, we have an answer. It's a genetic mutation in the IRF2-BPL gene. It's very, very rare. There's less than 150 patients in the world with it. It generally affects kids. It can have very devastating effects on motor skills, ability to walk, ability to talk, and can lead to premature death. That news was obviously very difficult to receive, but there is hope because gene therapy and gene editing and all of these things are becoming a reality. Pretty quickly after we received Ellie's diagnosis, we established a foundation called Ellie's Team. The mission of Ellie's Team is to translate medical research into a treatment in record time. Our goal or hope for the future is that every kid with this devastating disease has a treatment, and future children who are diagnosed with this are also told there is a treatment or multiple treatments that are readily available.
So when parents and other families are sitting in the hospital and they get a diagnosis like ours or similar to ours, that there's less unknown and more about what can happen and what are the treatments available. Not in the long term, but in the short term or right away.
So I want to tell you a little bit more about Ellie's team and how we worked with them during this process. I think it's illustrative of how we work with many of the rare disease foundations that we work with through the Rare Disease Advising Program. Ellie was fortunate. She completed her diagnostic odyssey just several months after being born. She had access to whole genome sequencing testing. This identified the mutation in her IRF2-BPL gene as the cause of her symptoms. Her early diagnosis was a stroke of luck, but one that could become more normalized if access to whole genome sequencing gains wider adoption, especially for use in undiagnosed complex pediatric cases. The second piece of luck, a few months before Ellie was even born, we had funded a grant exploring a proof of concept model for an AAV gene therapy related to IRF2-BPL-related disorders. And when we met with Michelle and Dan, we shared this research with the permission of the investigator and discussed what steps might be needed to move it forward. Now, this disorder is a gain-of-function pathogenic mutation where you would typically need to knock down the pathogenic allele and upregulate the normal allele. So a gene therapy alone we didn't think would be the fix for this, but promising data coming out of this grant led us to believe that even a slight increase in the production of this protein could be therapeutic. So we explored other treatment options in addition to the gene therapy. We looked at small molecule repurposing. We spoke with a company that uses the patient's RNA transcriptomic data to predict potential drug candidates and then test those in an animal model using tadpoles. So that was one parallel track of research. We also engaged with the Jackson Laboratories Rare Disease Translational Center and convinced them to develop a humanized mouse model using Ellie's mutation, as this was a better mouse model that's more reflective of the disorder, as opposed to the traditional gene knockout mouse models that were readily available. We also spoke with many ASO developers, antisense oligonucleotides, to help knock down the pathogenic allele. We spoke with the NLORM Foundation, the laboratory of Tim Yu at Boston Children's Hospital, and other biotech drug developers. This was going to be really challenging because the gene itself is a single exon gene. It has no introns. It's sort of unusual. It's also very GC rich. These are very problematic for ASO designs. So we knew that would be unlikely to move forward, but we wanted to push it all the way down and exhaust all options. And eventually we did give up on this after testing many different iterations of ASOs. And throughout this process, we also encouraged the family to work with other family-led foundations that were in this space and to share their knowledge, to avoid redundancies and accelerate progress across the board. Ultimately, we didn't just help Dan and Michelle. We connected them with resources and expertise to allow them to fast-track their own therapeutic journey. This underscores how having strategic collaborations can turn rare disease research from an uphill battle into a coordinated effort towards solutions. And we believe this model of educating and empowering foundations to become leaders of their own therapeutic research is one that we hope is scalable, and we can provide support to many additional foundations using this manner, whether they're looking to start or to improve their own therapeutic odysseys. Thank you for your time. Hopefully, if you have any questions, you can come talk to me or check out our website. I want to thank all the members of the RTW Foundation board and its staff, as well as all our foundation partners that we work with in the program, and a special thanks to Dan and Michelle from Ellie's team who exemplify the impact that rare disease parents can have in this research. So thank you.